Some psalms are certainly easier to understand than others. I don't think Psalm 41 is one of them for our devotion today. If you read it and get some other thoughts, please get in touch with me. But one thing I am convinced of, you won't really understand anything of the psalm if you don't know the backdrop to David's writings. He's writing full of fear about his very own son Absalom. Absalom who hates him. Absalom who wants his kingship. Absalom who wants his dad dead. Now, so much of all this goes back to David's own shocking actions years ago when he committed adultery with Bathsheba, even having her husband murdered. And since then, so many family situations have cropped up, and one particularly of Absalom and his sister Tamar, and then Ammon, and shocking things have gone on. And David's parenting is hopeless at best. And yet he's caught between a rock and a hard place, because crimes have been committed and David should mete out justice according to God's law. And yet, in a sense, how can he when he's committed shocking crimes himself, adultery and murder? And it all leads to just total despair. He's a man who's full of fear at the beginning of the psalm, and he's sharing that with God. He describes himself as being poor, which, humanly speaking, he wasn't materially, but that is the state and the mess that he's in because of the consequences of his whole actions and family and what's happened. So what on earth can we learn from this psalm, you may be saying? Because hopefully we've not got a family problem, difficulty like David encountered. And yet we see that David, it's his faith in the last few verses that shines through and teaches us something so important. Because even before his faith shines through, he's talking about his foes, his enemies. And one of those is Absalom, his own son. In verse 4, he's already asked God for forgiveness again, even though he's been forgiven for what he did in the past. He knows so much of what is happening is because of him and his consequences years ago and his inability to then father and discipline correctly. And yet he asks for forgiveness in verse 4. He asks again in verse 10 for mercy. And so that teaches me that no matter what situation we're in, no matter what we've done, whether it's our fault or others, we can always ask God for mercy. And we can even get to David does in like 13, the last verse, we can even praise God, trusting him that he will come to our aid.